Okay, imagine this. Your dog gets diagnosed with cancer. What's the first thing you'd do? You'd start treatment, right? You'd focus on making them comfortable, and you'd probably want to spoil them with their favorite food, maybe a nice piece of beef. But what if I told you that, according to one cancer vet, that could be a huge mistake? Today, we're diving into his urgent warning. The very first thing you need to do when your dog has cancer is stop feeding them beef. It's a really tough question, isn't it? Especially when you're trying so hard to do everything right. You buy the expensive food, the one that says premium right on the bag, the one with real meat as the number 1 ingredient. But what if that exact food, the one you believe is the absolute best for them, is actually fueling the very disease you're trying to fight? So let's get right into it. This isn't just some vague advice. This is a direct, no-nonsense warning from Dr. Park Sang-wook, a veterinarian who specializes in treating cancer. What he's saying is that feeding beef to a dog that's going through cancer treatment can seriously undermine all that hard work. It's a massive claim, I know, but he's got the science to back it up.
See, Dr. Park doesn't just say, hey, don't feed your dog beef. He explains exactly why it's such a big problem. He's broken it down into 4 key scientific reasons, and each one points to a specific thing inside beef that cancer cells just absolutely thrive on. So we're going to walk through each one so you can see for yourself what he's talking about.
Okay, let's start with reason number 1. And honestly, this might be the most important one. It's all about the raw fuel that cancer cells are uniquely programmed to use to grow and just spread like crazy. So, this special fuel we're talking about is an amino acid called methionine. Now, here's the deal. Our dog's healthy cells use it, sure, but many types of cancer cells are completely dependent on it. It's like they're addicted. They literally cannot thrive without a constant supply to power their insane growth. And this right here really paints the picture, doesn't it? When you look at different proteins, beef has what the vet literally calls bomb-like levels of methionine. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet for cancer cells. But then you look at other things, like chicken breast or white fish, and the levels are so much lower, much more manageable. This analogy from Dr. Park just says it all, perfectly. You could be spending thousands of dollars on chemo and other treatments trying to put out the fire that is cancer. But if you're feeding your dog a high methionine diet like beef, you are pretty much just pouring gasoline right on the flames. You're fighting against your own efforts. All right, let's move on to the second reason, because it builds on the first. It's not just about the fuel for growth. It's also about a key ingredient that cancer needs to make copies of itself over and over again. And this brings us to heme iron. It's the very thing that gives red meat its color. Now, biologically speaking, heme iron is critical for DNA to replicate. And what is cancer at its most basic level? It's just uncontrolled cell division, which means uncontrolled DNA replication. Cancer cells hijack this whole process, and they need a ton of heme iron to pull it off. So here's the crucial takeaway. The very quality we associate with a good, rich piece of beef, that deep red color, is actually a visual warning sign in this situation. It's a direct signal of just how much heme iron is packed in there, the very stuff that cancer cells are desperate for to fuel their rapid replication. Okay, on to reason number 3. This one is all about the body's internal environment. We know from so much research that chronic inflammation can create the perfect storm for cancer to grow and thrive. And it turns out some foods are like throwing fuel on those inflammatory flames. The culprit here is a type of omega-6 fatty acid known as arachidonic acid. You'll find it in really high amounts in marbled beef, the fat that gives it all that flavor. The problem is, this fatty acid is a direct trigger for the pathways in the body that cause inflammation. So a diet full of marbled beef can create this pro-inflammatory state that cancer just loves. And that brings us to the 4th and final scientific reason he gives. Now, this one's a little more complex, but stick with me because it's so important. It's about how a compound in beef can literally flip the on switch for aggressive cancer growth right down at the cellular level. Let's just walk through it step by step. First, a diet high in beef can lead to too many phosphates in the blood. Second, those extra phosphates get inside the cancer cells. And now, here's the critical part. Once they're inside, they activate these things called growth signaling pathways. The 2 most infamous ones are called AKT and mTOR. Just think of them as the master on switch for cancer. When they get flipped, they tell the cancer cell to multiply like crazy and to resist dying. So, we've gone through the 4 big scientific reasons. But for Dr. Park, this isn't just something he read in a textbook. His passion about this comes from real, heartbreaking experiences with his patients, and one case in particular that really changed everything for him.
It was a 14-year-old Cocker Spaniel who had memory tumors. She got the absolute best care you could imagine. Surgery, 3 months of chemo, and by all accounts, the treatment was a success. But then the unthinkable happened. The cancer came roaring back, and it grew in a place where there weren't even any mammary glands left. At the time, nobody could figure it out. But later, Dr. Park put it all together. The dog's main food, through all of this, was beef. The treatment was fighting the cancer, but the food was feeding it right back.
That is a tough story, I know, but understanding the problem is the first step toward finding a solution. So let's pivot from the why this is happening to the what can we do about it. Dr. Park lays out a really clear, actionable food plan for dogs who are fighting cancer. Okay, so based on everything we've talked about, here are the top 4 foods you want to get out of their bowl immediately. We've obviously covered beef in detail. Pork is on the list for a lot of the same reasons. But look at the last 2, cooked sweet potato and white rice. You might be thinking, wait a minute, I thought those were good for dogs. Well, they're simple carbs, which means the body breaks them down into sugar really, really quickly. And cancer cells are notorious sugar fiends. They just gobble it up for energy. So what should their bowl look like? This chart sums it up perfectly. For proteins, you're going to want to swap out the beef and pork for low methionine options like chicken breast, white fish, or egg whites. For fats, you want to focus on anti-inflammatory things like omega-3 oil, not the inflammatory omega-6s you find in marbled meat. And for carbs, the goal is basically little to none. Definitely avoid those high sugar sources like rice and sweet potato. And really, this all brings us to the biggest takeaway here. For Dr. Park, diet isn't just an extra thing to think about. It is step 1. It's the absolute first thing he addresses. Before chemo, before anything else, he gets the food under control. Because he believes that without that foundation, you're always just fighting an uphill battle. The whole point of this isn't to scare you, it's to empower you with information. The science really suggests that what we feed our dogs matters so much, especially when their bodies are in the toughest fight of their lives. So it just leaves us with one simple but really important question to ask ourselves. What's in your dog's bowl tonight?